Hello, and welcome to the Mystic Nerd Squad podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Meyerson, and we're here today to have a conversation about the joys of parenting. Joining me on the other side of the virtual screen is my friend Joy, and I'm so excited. She is literally the bringer of joy. And one of my favorite authors, poets, and just an amazing, joyful presence in the world. So, Joy, welcome and thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly. It's an honor to be with you again.
Oh my gosh, yes. So Joy and I figured this out because I was like, okay, I know you were here. Was it about a year ago? We couldn't remember exactly. So she was on episode 7 of season 1 back in December of 2021. So when this podcast was a little baby and just getting its start in the world. So, and hers was an episode that just was so uplifting. I really recommend that everybody go back and listen to that after checking this episode out. Today, we're going to dive into the joys of parenting. And if you've been following this series, I've had a couple episodes already, but I just felt called to do a season that focused on parents and the topics and the things that are important to us. And Joy was like, how about having a conversation about the joys of parenting? And I was like, well, that is refreshing because there's definitely a lot of things that are stressful and hard and challenging. But, you know, we both shared before we came on screen, like the decision and the desire to be a mother was something that existed in us from as long back as we can remember, you know? So we're going to talk about that tonight. And I think a word that comes up for me a lot when we're talking about parenting is the idea of legacy and, you know, bringing things forward. And I think the first thing I think about when the word legacy comes about is like, how am I parenting, learning from all of the good things and the mistakes that my parents made and moving forward. So, Joy, you have 2 sons. What did you do differently with them than you had as parenting for yourself from your parents?
That gives me goosebumps. Kelly, that is such a beautiful question because one of the things I was going to suggest is that we get to parent differently than our parents did or the same. It just depends. And I have so many thoughts about it because, first of all, well, my mother never saw me.
Hmm.
I knew she was living in her head, and I was a very present mother.
Mm.
In my kids, even my sons are 35 and going on 38. And I told them I was doing this interview with you and asked them if they had any feedback for me. And everything they said points to the fact I was there.
Mm.
My son, they even bring up things I didn't remember. So, before I continue on this question, I want to just remind everyone that we do the best we can.
Mm.
We are always doing the best we can. And don't get down on yourself if you make a mistake or you feel you make a mistake or you didn't do something well, but you get to apologize to your children. You get to say, I didn't handle that well. Like, honesty is the best policy.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as my parents, when our sons were young, I was sleeping in and they were getting up, and my husband's like, Joy, mothers get up with their children. Like, the ways I wasn't well mothered, my husband was well mothered.
Mm.
And so you learn from maybe you have a partner that teaches you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, parents, you get up with your son and you feed them breakfast, because I woke myself up. Took my own breakfast. I mean, I loved my mother, and bless her, she's in the great beyond, but she didn't have super mothering skills.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, yeah, the legacy of it. And I've heard, both my sons are married, and I every now and then we're together, and I get this feedback of what I did that those boys told their wives that I did,
Mm.
that they really liked. Um, the tucking in at night, and we made up this thing that was called tight tight. I would start at their face and go all the way down their body, and like pad that their bodies, like
Right, with the
tight tight.
blanket,
Yeah, with the blanket,
tuck them
like
all in.
tight tight. We did tight 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 tight, tucking in, and I don't know how that ever started. But just the little things you do with your children, the games that just happen. You
Mm-hmm.
told me the reading over the funny passage from the book, Kelly. Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
name what just happened for you and your
Oh,
son?
yeah. I mean, for me, I think one of the biggest joys of parenting is that bedtime routine. And they can be stressful. And believe me, we've had our stressful times with bedtime routines, especially when he was very little. But now it's like we share a book together. So we were reading a book together, and it was a brand new book. And we just came on this passage. And as I was reading it, he was hysterically laughing. And he had me read it 3 more times. And we were just, every time we giggled all the way through it. And it was just this like bliss and joy, and like truly enjoying that part of the routine. So I can resonate with that the special moments that happen, and those routines that develop, that become these rituals that are just it's part of your family culture at a certain point, right?
Yes. And then to have my one son saying that, we had our family culture.
Mm-hmm.
And when they would go, he said his memories of going to other people's homes, he couldn't wait to get back to our home, because he was just noticing the differences in those family systems, and things that maybe weren't working as well as
Mm-hmm.
things were working in our family system.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, when you said legacy, it reminded me of what I'm doing for my children. The idea came up in me after reading a book that's an incredible book called The Museum Makers,
Mm.
that we are all creating museums basically in our homes. But somehow that book gave me the idea that I have so many pieces of paper and photographs, letters from my parents who are deceased. From my grandparents, I have pictures and different things. And the idea came in me to make a book for each of my sons, just their own particular book, because I had a different relationship with each of these boys. They're 3 years apart, but they were so uniquely
Mm-hmm.
themselves. And that leads me to say that honoring these young people that are in our lives is a joy. Supporting them. If the time that my one son is crying at night, and he's a little older, and I go to tuck him in, and I'm like, what's going on? He said, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, Mom, I don't want to go. They laugh at me. I'm overweight. We're having outdoor day. And I'm like, sweetheart. And it was in 3 days, and he wanted to lose his stomach in 3 days.
Oh.
And the thing is, he's 6'4", but he grew late. So he was heavy. And I said, if you don't want to go to that outdoor day, if that's going to be too hard for you, I'm okay if you want to stay home. Like, I have goosebumps in the ways I supported these boys. Sometimes they asked, Mom, I can't go to this anymore. I cannot. I signed up for it and I can't go. And I'm like, tell me about that. He's, well, I thought I really wanted to do it. And whatever it was. But I let that one son not go to wrestling. It's just listening to them. The son who really wanted to go to a different school, he was getting bullied, and we let him follow his friend who was going to a Catholic school for a change. And our son went, and then after so long, his friend had left and come back to the public school. My son stayed a little longer, and then he begged to come back. And I honored these children. And sometimes I had to work with my husband, who's like, are you crazy? He has to stay till the end of the year. And I'm like, you need to know he does not. I talked to the guidance counselor at our public school, and she's like, you don't wait till the end of the year. You bring him back when you bring him back. Bring him back as soon as possible. It's just the joys of listening to them, and we had our troubles. We had our challenges. We had the squirrel that I rescued, a baby squirrel, because we had my husband, there was a reason that he was having a tree taken down. And the people came to our door with this piece of wood that had a squirrel nest in it.
Oh my gosh.
With these baby black squirrels.
Oh my gosh.
I learned so much about myself and about other things raising these boys. So the joys of education happen when you're raising children. And I had 2 sisters. And then I had 2 sons. So anyway, the squirrel. So I got a pipette. I called animal control, and I learned how to care for this infant squirrel. And I mothered this infant squirrel until he became too large. And it was time to set him free. And my older son freaked out at dinners like, no, I need a cage in my room. You cannot let that squirrel go. And he was just beside himself. But I was not going to have a growing squirrel living in my house. So we weren't. And we just, you have to put your foot down. I listened, but, honoring their opinions. My younger son said, I said something about his girlfriend and him, and he goes, well, what did he say? You never let she and I have a closed door.
You're like, nope, then that won't be happening.
Yeah, no closed doors. Oh gosh. What other notes? And my younger son, it was interesting because he said that the whole family how did he say it? We we had to manage the energy that was that older boy. He said it
Mm-hmm.
in some really interesting way. He's like, um, what did he say? Younger son said we managed the tension of his brother. And after his brother was in the Peace Corps, he became a better brother.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, yeah.
That is really funny.
So, um, and one thing I want to say that is that when my children were young, another mother gave me a mother's journal.
Mm.
And she said, you will not remember the crazy, wonderful things that your sons say. Capture them in writing in this journal. And I was pretty good about writing things down. And that journal is one of the favorite things that when my grown sons visit, these men in my lives, they love to read that journal.
Mm.
So I recommend that for new parents.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, I have chills. One of the gifts that I got when my son was born was a journal. And another mom who said, she said almost verbatim the same thing. And so I've kept this journal, not every day consistently. And
Yeah.
sometimes it'll go like 6 months, even a year. And then I feel like I have to go back and like fill in some of the blanks and the things that we might want to remember. But I love that. Yeah, I think
Yes.
it's so special.
I'm glad you're doing it
Mm-hmm.
for your sons. There was the joy of their hands tucked into mine when we crossed streets when they were little,
Mm-hmm.
and I wrote poetry about that after.
Mm-hmm.
Their growth in all their stages beyond diapers and their friendships. The day they rode a two-wheeler. Um, but let's see, what did I write here? For highly sensitive me, the ways joy showed up throughout those days will be immensely different for you.
Mm-hmm.
I raised my sons in the 80s and 90s when working mothers had become a total thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a stay at home mother in the 80s and 90s. So I would go to the grocery store with these little people, and these older mothers would like thank me for
You were a trailblazer in their minds.
I wasn't, because I was staying home with my boys.
Yeah.
Um, not everyone can do that. And it's a choice, and many mothers cannot do that. They need to work. It's who we are. But me as a sensitive soul, I couldn't even imagine doing two things like parenting and working.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't. Um, we bring who we are to the task, ready or not, within ourselves and without. We bring an echo of what didn't work in our growing up lives, or we make conscious decisions to parent differently.
Mm.
Did you do that? Have you done?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think my husband and I both, and we're very fortunate in that we had really good parenting, very family centered, high family value parents growing up, So, you know, both of my parents didn't have that kind of an upbringing. I think there was a lot of drama and trauma, and they were sort of like passed around, didn't really get the opportunity to have that close-knit family. They didn't go to their events and things. My parents went to every single event and I have a younger sister and a younger brother. And they were band parents because my brother is 7 years younger than me. So I think there's like 8 years or so, maybe longer, that they were consistently band parents every year. So they went and did everything. And I can recall, and I don't know when exactly they told me, that they decided that their focus was their family. And they decided that, my mom was going to stay at home. This was, I was born in the 70s, but grew up through the 80s. And my dad could have worked more, but he wouldn't really work overtime. He would come home. We always had dinner together. We had evenings and weekends together. We took trips together. We didn't do fancy stuff. We used to go camping for 2 weeks, but it was perfect. It was awesome. Yeah. And we had close-knit extended family. So that, I feel like that legacy has passed down, and being with extended family and those relationships are so important to me. So I think we've carried those on. And then the places where we feel like it was just a different time and a different generation, that, I can relate to some of your really responding to what your children are saying and really listening to their intuition and their voice and respecting them as being very wise, regardless of how old they are. Like, we spoke to my son as though he was the wisest soul from the moment he was born. We never, talked down to him or treated him like a baby, obviously, but we didn't speak to him like that. We spoke to him like he was a full, knowing being. And he was very bright from the time he was born. He was sort of like looking around. My husband played music for him, like right after he was born, and he was like tuned right into it. Like, yeah, he was just like in tune from the get-go. So I feel like we're very tuned into who he is, and not expecting him to measure up to something. Whereas I feel like when we were kids, there was the expectation, like, as a girl, you be a good girl. Good girls don't make a lot of noise. They don't disrupt things, whereas I feel like there's a lot less of that pressure.
Yeah.
And I'm generalizing.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, Kelly. And you reminded me that I cried when my son marched down the field in band, because I was in band. And that was the first, and I was at the game, that was the first time that I really resonated with something that my sons did, that I also had done. Because my dad would say, he yelled, and I've written about this, why would I want to go to the band concert? Those kids can't play. And he's yelling.
He's not wrong some of the time.
Yeah. They were not the kind of parents that came to the band stuff, so for us to be in this with generations, we get to be different. We're raising children in a different era than our parents raised us. Things are inherently different, but also we get to choose. And the more we're awake, awake to the moments, the better life is. Oh my gosh, what else?
I feel like that makes me think of like being awake to the moments. That's one of the things that we really treasured about, the pandemic and being home for those couple years. We had meals together, and not that we hadn't done that in the past, but we had like every meal together. And we were like, oh, let's be really purposeful about this. Let's have dinners together. Let's sit. Let's, pray if you're into praying, but like just express gratitude. And for us, I think that's probably the most like spiritual time for us together as a family, when we're sitting together at a meal and being grateful for it, and teaching my son social conscious and recognize that not everybody has a table full of food like this. And it's on us to think about the other people, to be grateful for what we have, to give what we're able to give, and to teach him that. And I think those moments are so memorable for kids. And I think it's also so impactful. These will resound in their mind and will put them towards that path of wanting to cultivate goodness in the world.
That's so beautiful, Kelly. Yes. We had those too. I used to remember that these were teachable moments, and we raised really beautiful men. And they are beautiful men. They're beautiful husbands. And someday I will be a grandma, I hope. I have this written down. The other thing I want to say is because I was a journal writer, and I have all my journals, like 40 years of journals, but I happened to open one and I wrote this down. It says, Andrew reminds me of patience. Yesterday, Andrew reminds me of patience. I don't know if I wrote this or he told me this. I'm not sure. But this says, yesterday, and I think, no, wait a minute. I think I wrote this in my journal. Yesterday, Kevin had a day off. I gave you their name. I gave you their names that I wasn't going to do. Before it left for school, he wanted to wake his brother to ask him about his night playing this journey on the internet, this EverQuest journey on the internet. I didn't think he needed to wake his brother for such a reason, a trivial reason. So I said something like, you are growing in patience as you mature. You're growing in patience as you mature, and you can wait until later to find out. Let him sleep in on his day off. I have goosebumps, but if you pretend they're good at something, like you're growing in maturity, I'm sure you can do this differently.
I love that.
Andrew left without waking his brother. May I remember positive lessons. I journaled, I grew myself as they grew up. If you journal as your children are growing, you might grow yourself up in new ways.
Yes.
And I also did. And Irene, there was a time that I just felt called to do something on a Sunday night. And I remember I had to work up my courage to ask my husband, hey, what about if you and the kids have a Sunday night? And what if I don't do the dishes and, you make the dinner for them and I scoot out and I do this thing? And I think it really gave those men a gift. Because when we honor ourselves, we don't know, we're gifting other people.
Yes.
I gifted my family by going and doing some things on my own. And, they learned to do what they are good at. And
I love that. I have to say, one of the things, like if somebody asks me, like, what's like new mom advice, one of the things that I will say is, especially if you're type A personality like me, or you tend to be a little controlling like me, the best thing that I ever did was suppress that when my son was born and allow my husband to figure things out on his own. And my husband is an amazing dad. He has been a stay-at-home dad more than I have ever been home with my son. And I've never had, like, I've heard these stories about, moms who are like, oh, I'm going away, but I need to pack the bag and prep the food. And I mean, it's like there's a joke in there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
I think that is a gift, like being able to be a true partner for someone that, it doesn't matter which one of us does it because we both are capable. And that has allowed so many moments to be easier, that like if there's something stressful going on and one of us needs to be able to step away, the other isn't like, well, now I don't know what to do and I need you to, we can give each other that freedom too. So I think the fact that you've done that for your sons is huge. And I'm sure their partners feel the same way. Like, thank you for raising someone who is capable. And that, I will say, that is my mother-in-law definitely raised my husband to be independent, to be able to do, we never had that, like, this is a mom job, this is a dad job, or this is a boy job and this is a girl job. I will take out garbage. He will, make dinner. Like, there's no gender assignments to the tasks that have to happen in the house. They're just things that have to happen in the house. And whoever A has time, B likes to do it, or C hates it the least, right? So depending on what task.
It's so fabulous how you are parenting your son, and how what you just explained is so beautiful. And it reminded me that the generation of us raising our sons, it was a little different, because I was home and my beautiful ex, because I am divorced, he wanted a stay-at-home mother wife is what he wanted, but it worked for our family. But there was the day that Andrew, the husband was on the road a lot. He wasn't home. He was on the road a lot. Let's say that. And the day that my older son was really upset, he was in the basement on the computer, and he's like, when dad's home, he's angry with me. So Andrew was a teenager at this point, maybe 12 or 13. And I said, I miss dad. And when he's home, he's angry with me. And then I remember going up the stairs. Maybe my husband had just come home. And he said, I love coming home to be with our sons, but I don't know what to do. Like, my dad, I liked everything he did. He played golf. I played golf. He played poker. I played poker. And he said, these boys, I don't get them. And, I stepped in with my wisdom, or my God connection wisdom that came to me. I said, okay, what's coming to me is, what if you don't need anything you spend time with this child, and you do something unique. You don't worry about doing the same thing with, doing what he likes. So he started just taking that son to lunch at Bob Evans restaurant or something. And he really did his best not to need something, Andrew to become something, just to be with him. Mm-hmm. And then he took him, they went and they shot skeet. They did something different at the club that my husband belonged to. They looked for ways to do something. And after 9/11, I got into intense fear. And I didn't want to fly anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And my ex had all these frequent flyer miles. So he ended up taking one son at a time on some great trip.
Mm-hmm.
And, that is something that is a joy in parenting is when if you have more than one child and to have one of them alone for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's a it's it is one of those gifts that you will forever remember. They will forever remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this, and then there was the time that my ex said, "Hey, I'm always the one going with one of the sons. When I'm over here with the one son, why don't you take the other son on a trip?" And so I had this one trip with one of the sons. But it's just, and I will say, you never know how life will unfold
Mm.
as you keep growing and changing. And I hope that you believe in that and you do. You may become an individual, something akin to who I have become, which is I was talking to my son, my older son, who was serving in the Peace Corps in Namibia, Africa,
Mm.
having a phone call when this question comes up in me that it wasn't a thought, it was just from
Mm-hmm.
my heart. Would you like me to visit? And he's like, yes. And I want to go on a photo safari in South Africa,
Oh
Mom.
my gosh, wow.
And I said, Andrew, how are your funds? And I knew that what he was going to say. And he goes, they're not good. And I said, oh, so you really want me to treat you to a photo safari in South Africa? Is that?
Did I get that right?
Yeah. But I had the means to do this. And we, and I really think it had been so long. So he was 32 at the time, I believe. He had left home at 18. So I didn't feel like I knew who he was,
Mm.
but he probably didn't know who I had become. So anyway, when I said, how long will I stay in Swakopmund, Namibia? It's the capital of Namibia, I believe. And he said, oh, let's do 3 days. I'll probably have to work. So I flew to Johannesburg. I was there for a night or two. Then he came. We had this amazing time together. And to learn who he had become
Mm.
and he learned who I had become,
Oh wow.
we had such a great present moment time with one another. And we were so present moment and listeners, and that photo safari company gave us these other opportunities that they didn't give to all their clients, like, oh, let's take you to the medicine woman, oh, let's take you to the school. Because we are who we are.
Mm-hmm.
um, and my other son knows that someday we might work out something, because at the time this son wasn't married, he
Mm-hmm.
was single, but now both my sons are married. And so to take your 32-year-old son on a 2 week, spend 2 weeks with him. Oh, and when we were in Swakopmund, he was with me every moment.
Mm.
He wasn't working because he had learned, I want to be with you.
Mm.
And he even didn't put me in the cab to go to the airport to leave. He came in the cab to go to the
Mm.
airport,
Oh.
and he helped me check in my bag to get them all the way to Atlanta. He, I have goosebumps
Mm.
of who this, the Taurus kid in our home, who he became as a man.
Mm-hmm.
There's no comparison,
Mm-hmm.
really, to we grow, we change, but with good parenting and enjoying being parents, our children can become such beautiful citizens on the planet.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. And I love the perspective that you have, because you have, grown sons. So you have the perspective of who they were when they were with you all the time and who they are now that their lives have been informed by you, but they've grown and you've grown. I mean, I think that's such a beautiful thing, you know?
Thank you, Kelly. And to say that even though I knew from some young age that they weren't mine, that these children came through me to have their lives.
Yeah.
But even now, I think it started in COVID when I noticed someone on Facebook was Zooming with their family once a month or something. I started Zooming. I invited my sons to Zoom. So we Zoom once a month.
Oh.
And the conversations that we have are so wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I look forward to these visits. And of course, they come so fast because a month, we know how fast a month
Yes.
goes.
That's so true.
Yeah, and they're busy in their lives. They're, working, and their husbands, and they each have a dog, and yes.
Oh my gosh.
Thank
That's
you
so wonderful.
Thank you for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. And I know as people were listening and hearing your different anecdotes and your experience as a mom and as a co-parent, how could people connect with you if they wanted to know more about you or spend some time with you?
Thank you so much. I have a newer email, which is joyfulresor@gmail.com. So you could contact me if you have any questions. And I serve clients as their spiritual mentor. They call me a joy bringer. But yeah, and I have a website, joyonyourshoulders.com, which you could visit if you are inclined, with a lot of articles on there and a newsletter you could sign up for or not. So yeah, I'm available.
I love it.
And if you Google Joy Resor podcasts or something, I've been on very many. I love being interviewed, and I'm good at listening and talking.
Agreed. And I would recommend going to your website so they can see some of the beautiful illustrations and poems in the books that you've written. Yeah. That's like a whole other piece of, who you are and what you've offered the world.
Thank you. Yes. And yeah, I have 2 books that families adore. So we'll leave it at that. Yeah. Thank you. It's always a gift to speak with you, dear.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I really encourage all of you to find all the ways that you can connect with Joy and to check out some of her projects and things that she's done. Beautiful poetry, which is always near and dear to my heart. But I've really enjoyed having this conversation about the joys of parenting. And let us know. Leave some comments. Be sure to like and rate the episode so that it populates so other people can check it out. And let us know how this has resonated with you and your own parenting journey. Any last words, Miss Joy?
Thank you, Kelly. Hmm. Allow your children to speak to you. Could I say one more anecdote? That my one son would come home like a storm and slam the door like he was safe from everything wrong in the world.
Uh-huh.
But he wouldn't talk about it, and he wouldn't talk about it. And this one day, he had a doctor's appointment, and we needed to leave in like 40 minutes or something. And he would not go. And I said, sorry, Charlie, you're not getting out of it. We are going to this doctor checkup thing. I cannot cancel at this hour. We're doing this thing. And it was in the car that I'm driving, and he is spilling his pain to me. And that was the reason he would come in the house like a storm that he wouldn't talk about. It's because someone had threatened him that if he talked about it, they were going to off him, like he was in pain. But that was the end of that. We got to rectify things. And so to be available to them is really important. And they're not just going to always talk when you want them to talk.
True.
It really could be some other day,
That's great. I love that. And thank you so much again. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.